You are now in the Wheatfield. I often say when giving tours that the Wheatfield at Gettysburg is the only Wheatfield I know of in the United States that is spelled with a capital W. It is today a proper name. If you told a former soldier of the Union or Confederate Army at the end of the Civil War that you fought in the Wheatfield, that's all you needed to say. Because by war's end, the Wheatfield would be remembered as one of the bloodiest and toughest fights in the American Civil War. On Thursday, July 2nd, 1863, in this small 20-acre field and surrounding woods, about 4,000 Confederate and Union men were killed, wounded, or captured here during the fight. Portions of this field, the lower parts, changed hands some 6 times. The fighting here was literally hand-to-hand. The story of the 4th Michigan Infantry Regiment, commanded by Colonel Harrison Jeffers, illustrates how close the fighting was. Prior to Gettysburg, Jeffers' command had been presented a new flag to carry into battle. When the governor of Michigan and a senator visited the regiment in camp, Jeffers made them a solemn promise that as long as he was living, he would protect that flag with his life, that it would never fall into the hands of the enemy. Well, on the second day at Gettysburg, in the ensuing battle, Jeffers spotted the flag lying on the ground and the Confederates about to carry it off. With a sword in his hand, he immediately rushed at the enemy. Slashing wildly, he brought down several of the Confederates until he himself was bayoneted to death. One account said he was literally pinned to the earth by bayonets here in the battle. Witnessing this sight was one of Jeffers' brothers serving here in the same regiment. And so he, with the help of several other members of the command, rushed to the body of their colonel. The Union group carried the colonel and the flag from the field. Jeffers had held true to his promise, giving up his life to protect the flag. Fighting nearby in the Wheatfield was another colonel by the name of Edward Cross. Cross was a seasoned veteran and the original commander of the 5th New Hampshire Infantry Regiment. At Gettysburg, he led a brigade. A former officer in the Mexican Army, Cross was one tough individual. To give you an idea of what I mean, prior to the Battle of Gettysburg, Cross had been wounded 12 times. On the Virginia Peninsula in the summer of 1862, Cross received a gunshot wound that pierced his left thigh. At Antietam, a bullet struck him in the forehead. 3 months later, while charging the famous stone wall along Marie's Heights during the Battle of Fredericksburg, a Confederate shell exploded above him, raining iron down on top of it. He was bruised all the way from his neck to his belly. Cross was universally known for his guts and leadership, but with so many wounds, it seemed Cross's luck would have to run out. At Gettysburg, the colonel had several premonitions of his own death. We know, for example, before every battle, Cross would get out a red bandana and he would ask his adjutant to tie the cloth around his head. On July 2nd, though, Cross, as he normally did, called for this staff member to assist him in this ritual. But instead of the usual red bandana, the cloth he produced was black. In addition to this foreboding act, General Winfield Scott Hancock, the commander of the 2nd Corps, rode up and addressed Cross prior to the action. "Colonel Cross," he said, "this is the last battle you'll fight without a star," meaning that Hancock was going to promote Cross to a general. Cross looked at Hancock and said, "General, you can keep your star. This will be my last battle." And sure enough, fighting here in the Wheatfield on July 2nd, Colonel Edward Cross was mortally wounded. He died later that night. It was the 13th and final wound that claimed his life. So in the Wheatfield here, you have probably some of the heaviest fighting known in the American Civil War. At the conclusion of the battle, it was said that you could walk in parts of the field and you would never touch the ground, literally walking on bodies, dead or wounded, scattered all over this field. The wheat was crushed and blood red from the Union and Confederate soldiers that fought so hard to possess the ground here. So horrible was it that if you fell here, chances are you might have to wait several days before you could get medical attention because the Confederates withdrew back to the west, back to the Peach Orchard area, and the Union withdrew back to the east, up to Cemetery Ridge. Thus, the wounded soldiers inside the Wheatfield became part of what we know as no man's land. One soldier, Brazilla J. Inman, from the 118th Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry Regiment, a second lieutenant here in the battle, noted that he slept with a sword next to his body for 2 days. Wounded and unable to leave the field on his own, Inman finally received medical attention on July 4th after spending 2 nights on the blood-stained field. One of his most terrifying memories of the ordeal was the sound of hogs that were running loose in the Wheatfield. The fighting had knocked down the fences, and now the pigs were roaming the battlefield. stripping the flesh from the bones of the dead soldiers. His officer's blade was his only protection from the animals, one of which came to within arm's reach and was repelled by his blade.